Okay, so Jen, back on the HBCU bomb threats. There is a historic issue when it comes to bomb threats in the Black community. And with that said, you have people like Lee Merrick calling it terrorism, and he's asking for the DOJ, Homeland Security, and U.S. Attorney's Office to investigate, to form a task force, particularly specifically on these issues. Is there talk around the White House for this to happen?
Well, what I can tell you, April, is that we take these threats incredibly seriously. That, again, our Homeland Security advisor is in close touch with law enforcement authorities at a federal and local level, and we are assessing what we think the origin, the reasoning, the motivation behind it is. We don't have an assessment of that quite yet, and I don't want to get ahead of that process, but we absolutely are behind these HBCUs. We are want to make very clear that we take these threats seriously and we deeply value their contributions, but it's important for law enforcement authorities and others to make an assessment before we make any determinations about next steps.
And does the White House see the irony in this moment with these continued bomb threats of HBCUs, particularly as much of the power structure up and down Pennsylvania Avenue are graduates of HBCUs, starting with the vice president, Howard University, Cedric Richmond Morehouse, Joyce Beatty, the head of the CBC, Central State, the House Whip, James Clyburn, South Carolina State. So is there irony in this moment?
I'm not sure I would call it irony, April, but I would say that it is scary. It is horrifying. It is terrible that these students, these faculty, these institutions are feeling under threat. Now, again, we don't know more details at this point in time, and I don't want to get ahead of law enforcement authorities, but certainly, given the history you referenced, this is something we're very mindful of, and that is why we're so focused on providing regular updates and seeing what our law enforcement team assesses.
And lastly, on the policing executive orders, Reverend Al Sharpton says that there's now a move to break apart the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act for standalone pieces that could possibly go up for a vote and one way or the other pass or fail. And they're doing that because the executive orders don't have as much teeth as a law. What do you say to this effort to break apart the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and make each portion a standalone bill?
Well, what I can assess from here, April, is whether there'd be support for getting that across the finish line and signed into law. As you know, the president very much wanted to sign the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act into law, and we did not take executive actions at the time because we wanted to leave room and space for that process to proceed in a bipartisan manner. So I'd really point you to leadership and committee chairs in Congress to see what is possible on that front. And certainly we agree, a law is more permanent than executive orders. That is absolutely true, but we have not even finalized, nor do I have a preview of exactly when it would be a police reform executive order. So I would also encourage people to wait to assess what that looks like.